This is John for Global Traveler. Today I have the pleasure of talking travel and baseball with Dale Torborg, son of Jeff Torborg, former Major League player and manager. How are you, Dale?
I'm good. I'm doing real well. How about yourself?
I'm good. The last time I saw you was a couple years ago at a convention in Indianapolis. It was cool to finally meet you.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was that Squared Circle Expo, and that was a good time.
And I want to talk to you about your career and then your father. There's
Hmm.
a documentary out, Jeff Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life. I will get to that because I absolutely loved it. But first, just a couple of questions. If you could tell us a little bit, how was it growing up with a father as a Major League Baseball manager?
It was great. I mean, I can't even think about another life that could have been better than the way that we grew up as a family. And being around my ages about 7 to 17, I was around the Yankees, and I grew up in New Jersey, so being around the Yankees and just being that close to New York, it was a special time. It was a special childhood. I got to do things that other people only could dream about, and I know that it wasn't lost on me. I didn't understand the magnitude of it when I was growing up, to the extent of going to those old timers games and seeing Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford and Roger Maris, you name it, the who's who of the greatest of the Yankees ever, were in that clubhouse. And then they were getting autographs from Don Mattingly and Dave Winfield and Ron Guidry and all those guys. It was cool to see that interaction. So, I got to be a kid around that, seeing those Hall of Famers, and then still being around the guys that were playing that ended up being Hall of Famers. It was just a really cool time. I wish I had known a little bit more about some of the old timers. Obviously you knew the names, um, but later on you see, oh my God, I was around Mickey Mantle, and then when you see what Mickey Mantle did with his career, and then you see Cal Raleigh after all those years of Mickey Mantle playing, you know, finally some of his records are being broken by Cal Raleigh. And it's amazing. That shows you the impact that Mickey Mantle had on the game. And here I was around those guys, and I have a picture which is incredible of, me as a bat boy, and
Wow.
you see, oh my gosh, everybody in the dugout, Yogi Berra, Don Larson, and then you see behind me is Roger Maris. And you're
Wow.
like, man, oh man, I wish I knew a little bit more then, of, the magnitude of how great these guys were. But I did understand just based on that, seeing how people reacted to them. But growing up, I'll tell you, it was amazing. I mean, getting to travel and do the things that a lot of people would, like I said earlier, would only dream about, and being able to go see, go to Baltimore. We used to drive from New Jersey to Baltimore, Boston, Cleveland, go and get to hang out. And I would be watching games and watching Cal Ripken play, being around on the field and taking, when they were taking batting practice, shagging fly balls. And it was an amazing childhood. And I can't imagine it being any better than the way I grew up. I just absolutely loved it.
I got chills just hearing all the names that you mentioned. I love the sport. You mentioned, traveling to all the ballparks. So when you were younger, what were some of your favorite stadiums?
Oh man. Well, I loved Boston, even though it was old, the history behind it, but that Green Monster, you see it on TV and then you get to be there. I remember signing my name up in the Green Monster back
Oh,
when I was with the White Sox. I want to say '05, maybe it was the year we won the World Series. I put my name up there,
wow.
in there. And I had some really cool experiences where I saw some really cool things when I went to Northwestern, and I was back in it was my summer after my freshman year. I was a film major at Northwestern. I ended up working on the movie A League of Their Own, and, talking about the amazing, stadiums and just monuments, is that was Wrigley Field. So they filmed a lot of that at Wrigley Field. So I got to spend a lot of time, not only put aside all the baseball time I did with, at Wrigley Field and all that, but to see it from a different level. I remember, so John Lovitz he was in the movie as the scout, and he asked me to film him while he was going around. He was doing that liar gimmick from Saturday Night Live. You remember when he would
Yeah,
do that
absolutely.
as the liar?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he at one point he goes, "Here we are at beautiful Wrigley Field, which I built, of course." So I'm filming him going around, and I remember we went up into the scoreboard. So we go up in the scoreboard, and they let us go all the way up, and I'm filming all this. And the cool thing is we're looking out through the holes, where they're putting the numbers in at Wrigley Field, and they're filming the scenes down for the movie. We're up there filming in the scoreboard. You can see them filming the tryout scenes for that movie that was in A League of Their Own.
Wow. Wow. And thank you for the 2000, you're part of the 2005 World Series. I mean, as a lifetime Chicago fan, one of my favorite years. And you spent a lot of
Mine
time,
too.
you spent a lot of time in Chicago. So what were some of your favorite spots here?
Uh, oh, in Chicago. Wow. I actually was, after my first year in pro ball, I actually was a bouncer. It was Excalibur at the time. Coming off of pro baseball, be a bouncer, but I thought, I'll train during the day, do the bouncing at night. This would be perfect. And, it was fun. It was interesting, but it was Excalibur, which I guess is called the Castle now. I
Yeah.
think it was on Ontario and Dearborn. And so I did that. But some of my favorite places, uh, man, I remember there was a pizza place called Rinaldi's,
Yeah.
which was down in Lincoln Park. That was incredible. When we were in college, we would hit the different places. Gamekeepers was one on, I think it was on Armitage. We spent a lot of time downtown. Let's see. I mean, obviously, you have the Michigan Mile is great. I mean, I always think of Christmas Vacation. That was one of my favorite movies, and that those scenes in the mall and all that was just classic. Um, there's a lot. I spent a lot of time downtown. Um, my gosh, I can't even think of all the different places because, going to Northwestern, we would spend a lot of the weekends just, going around to, it's funny, I'm a non-drinker, but I was the designated driver and we used to hit all the clubs and everything in Chicago. So I just loved, Lincoln Park was great. That's actually where I helped train Madonna, was at Lincoln Park. I worked with her on the off days, and we would go, and no one knew that it was her. She didn't look like what you would think. We had no entourage, no nothing. It was just her and me, and we would go use those fields at Lincoln Park. But the going to the fountain, going watching those the fireworks displays, and you had those the air shows, that would go overhead. I
Sure.
mean, it was just it's just a special spot. We lived right off of Lakeshore Drive, and it just was, just Chicago's one of my all-time favorite cities. Obviously, I, spent so much time on the South Side and, on 35th Street, but I spent a lot of time downtown, and just Chicago's just special.
Well, you've led an incredible life, but we're here to talk about your father, who had another incredible life. Major League player for 10 seasons, Major League manager for 11 seasons. Now that you helped on his documentary, Jeff Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life. And I have to say, it is a wonderful life. That documentary it was everything. It was touching. It was historic. I love the scenes with your mom talking. I love the little bits of like Danny Evans, because you wouldn't ordinarily see Danny Evans talking about stuff. Tell us about that.
It was incredible. I got to say that I got to give the credit where credit's due is to Matt Flesh. Matt is from Chicago. Matt was the one who directed the documentary Last Comiskey. He's working on another documentary, but incredible human being for one. A really talented filmmaker. But what had happened is when Last Comiskey was coming out, Dad was fighting the Parkinson's really hard, and He just didn't feel comfortable in front of the camera anymore. But when Last Comiskey came out, we watched the documentary and it was incredible. And I remember there was an email address at the end, and I just emailed him like, if you're the one who did this documentary, you did a great job. Thank you for the kind words you said about my dad, blah, blah, blah. He sent me his phone number. He's like, please feel free to call me, whatever. I'm so glad you liked it. And, and then my parents, I had them watch it, and they loved the Last Comiskey documentary. That I called Matt with them on the phone, and I said, we need to have this conversation. So it was great. We ended up all having the conversation about Last Comiskey. So when Dad passed, it was probably Dad passed on January 19th. I reached out to Matt probably sometime in February, and I just said, "Hey, man, I just, I have an idea. We had the memorial 3 days after he passed, but we wanted to do a celebration of life in New Jersey around where we grew up, and they had dedicated a field, I think, in 2019 in near our house in New Jersey, and it was it was a Union County field, and grew up in Mountainside and Westfield, and went to high school in Springfield. So it was up in that area. And it was just an amazing thing that they dedicated that field to him. But, as we were trying to figure out where are we going to do the celebration, like we said, let's do it in that area. And when I reached out to Matt, I said, hey, I have an idea. Do you want to help me with it? I said, I'd like to do it kind of a short documentary for the celebration of life. As we go through the different parts of the celebration of life, at the end, I would like to air this documentary. And so it was about an hour long, maybe just a hair over an hour long. And Matt, busted his tail to get it done, for us as we were going through all this stuff. So it was tremendous as it was. But then when I started going through the archives, my parents' archives, probably that was in June, a celebration of life. I started in February, maybe March or April. I started to really go through their archives. And I kept sending stuff to Matt, which for him, feel bad for the poor guy. I'm like, hey, I got this. And he would try to put it in. And it made it down to the wire that my parents it would have been their 62nd anniversary on the 6th of June, and then the celebration of life was on the 8th. Matt got it done, the first version of it done for us on the 6th. So my
Holy
mom,
cow.
we were all together, my brothers and my mom were all together at my brother's house in Long Island, and we watched it. And it was incredible, heart-wrenching, as you can imagine, seeing everything, but still absolutely incredible. But that wasn't the end of it, because when I got home, I kept on going. I ended up getting a digital converter on Amazon, and I converted 36 hours of VHS. I found a box of my mom and dad's VHS, including home movies and things of that nature. So when I did that, I had so much content. But I also, in 2009, I had filmed my dad. I said, Dad, you know what? Nobody does your stories like you do. I need to have them in your voice, that no one can say he didn't say that or he did say this or that. I said, I want your stories in your voice. And so I said, how about I set up a tripod camera and we just will go through your stories? And he goes, okay. So he wrote down like one sentence per story, and he had this like yellow legal sheet. And we did it about 4 days, and he had it on the ground, and I'd hit pause. He would look down and go, okay, ready? And he would go to the next story. I mean, it was absolutely incredible how, with him being such a great public speaker, he would look right into the camera and just go. And that's what you see on there. When he's talking to the camera, that's all that footage I had. And about 10 hours of that. And I sent it all to Matt. And then we would go through some stuff and say, what do you think about putting it here? And then there would be something else that came up, and I would get a footage of Don Drysdale's talking about dad. I would send it to him, which then, so it kept on. I mean, I've probably watched the documentary 40 sometimes, because we kept on going through and going, how about we put this here? but again, I got to give Matt the credit. What a tremendous director. I mean, for him to do all this is just incredible. But that's how it happened. And then we said, you know what? Let's not put a date on when we're going to release this. Let's just keep going until it's done. Because I kept finding more and more. I found a whole box of albums, pictures of, and one of them I look at, and it's the entire 1966 Dodgers Japan trip. And so I'm like, all right, I scanned through my parents' archive over 3,500 pictures. I had already scanned years earlier another 3 to 4,000 pictures. So I have an archive of between 7 and 8,000 pictures, and that's what you start to see in that documentary. And then the Wonderful Baseball Life came about because of my brother Greg said one of my favorite movies of all time is A Wonderful Life. And he said, why don't we do A Wonderful Baseball Life? And then I said, right. I mean, everything just seemed to click because one of my really, really good friends in the band is actually, I'm really good friends with all of them for a long time, is the band Alter Bridge. Three of the original members of Creed started the band Alter Bridge. And I said to my brother right on the spot, I go, Greg, Alter Bridge has a song called A Wonderful Life. And I said, it's exactly what this is about losing somebody. And it was about that wonderful life that you created for us and together. And I thought, my gosh, isn't that not the perfect end to this documentary? So it all kind of just seemed to click. And then so I wanted, and when Matt and I were trying to put this together and I was talking to my family about it, we just wanted people to really get to know Dad the way we saw him, not just seeing him from afar as a manager or as a coach, whether you loved him, as with the White Sox, or if you were a fan when he was playing with the Dodgers, or you couldn't stand our name if you were in New York as a Mets fan. I mean, you had it all. And so we touched on it all. We didn't shy away from the negatives. We didn't shy away from, he never wanted to leave Chicago in the first place. It was, you see in the documentary, they basically pushed him out and they tried to be like, oh, yeah, well, we didn't want to hold him back. No, that's not how it happened. So, in the uniforms things, Dad really was the one. He was the catalyst to get those new uniforms and create those. And I was there when saying they should be black and silver and white, just like because the Raiders and the LA Kings. And so I was there. I saw it. And now, as the history goes on, it kind of glazed over, didn't even mention Dad. I'm like, no, no, no. If you want the real history, this is what happened. He never wanted to leave the White Sox. We never wanted to leave. They always, the little the part, the narrative that got thrown out there. Oh, he wanted to go back to New York to be around his mom. I had gone to Northwestern, and I'm just finishing, my freshman year, and I'm partially going there because they're going to be in Chicago,
Yeah.
and they left. So I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. He if they gave him some sort of couple year guaranteed that, hey, we're in this long haul for you, he would never have left Chicago. Loved it. So we just, it was nice somewhat to set the record straight. The Dodgers have been incredible. The Dodgers found out about the documentary. I was in contact with them. They sent it to everybody in their alumni. I mean,
Wow.
it's just, I mean, it shows you that that's a first class organization. As soon as that they found out about it, we reached out to, a couple different people with the Dodgers, and they said, hey, this is what we're going to do in October. It's going to be the lead story of the alumni. And that's what they did. What they said, they did. And I'm be always thankful to the Dodgers for, putting it out there, and people really getting to see Dad. And there was a great quote. So I have two quotes from the documentary that I think encapsulize Dad. But then there was one afterwards. So one was Buddy Bell. Buddy Bell's one of my favorite people. He was actually one of my bosses with the White Sox. And Buddy's comment, and he says, Jeff Torborg was the perfect combination of kindness and toughness. Thought that was great. And
Perfect.
then Jeff Schaefer, the former White Sox player, says what we do as baseball players is our identity. What we do for others is our character. And Jeff Torborg oozed of character. Those two quotes I absolutely loved, and like I said, to me that kind of encapsulates Dad. But afterwards, I got a call from Fred Clare, who was the former general manager of the Dodgers and knew Dad. And he goes, Dale, I just want to let you know what an incredible documentary. And he said, it's great for all those people that didn't know your dad to get to know him like that. And this documentary only confirmed what we who knew him already knew. And I'm like, my gosh, those are your quotes right there.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, amazing.
He mentioned Buddy Bell and Jeff Schaefer. I've interviewed a lot of White Sox players over the years, and the number one, when I asked them who their favorite manager was, who they most liked playing for, the number one answer is Jeff Torborg.
Oh, that's unbelievable. And I mean, that says it all, and it kind of explains too why we did the documentary the way we did it.
Exactly.
It was about people, how Dad treated people, and we got people that talked about Dad and the impact that he had on them. It wasn't just like Jeff Torborg did this, and this. It was how he impacted all these different people. And you saw Buddy Bell saying, Jeff would allow us to come in a little bit late so that we could go to our kids' T-ball game. Or Jeff Schaefer going, he never forgot what Walter Alston did for him and was like, put that in there and saying, I'm going to do that for somebody. And that somebody was Jeff Schaefer. And to this day, Jeff Schaefer said it was the greatest thing anyone's ever done for him. And, I'm still in touch with all those people. And I reached out to everybody that was on that documentary afterwards. And it was so interesting too, is how you have that camaraderie that you might not see them day to day. You might not have talked to them in years, possibly. But once you talk to, I mean, everyone, we talked for 45 minutes to an hour to 2 hours, and it was all talking about, Dad, but also about baseball, of what baseball means to so many people. And just to give you an example, my doctor, Dr. Torres, and he we're sitting there, I'm going through my physical with him a couple of days ago, and we're talking about the documentary because he's like, it brought back so much to me and how important it was for me to sit there. And I used to watch games with my grandfather, and he said, it just doesn't seem as, he's like, that's an era gone by. And he goes, it just doesn't seem like that happens anymore. So he said, just seeing those names and hearing those people and just thinking about it, he goes, it brought me back to an amazing place in my life. And I was like, man, so you know, everybody has a different reaction to the documentary. So I'm thrilled when somebody does. I tell people all the time, if you watch it, let me know. I want to hear what you thought, because everybody has a different reaction to it and it hits them in different places. But, I've had so many people, and it's been amazing, reach out and say how much that touched them. And you had brought up about my mom. My mom, that people talk about, a couple of them are like, I just wanted to reach through the TV and give your mom a hug.
Yes,
Yeah. And
exactly.
she's incredible. I mean, she's 84, and you would never know that from the documentary. She's an incredible person, and we said, Mom, you ended up being the star of this thing because your personality just shone right through. And obviously, I mean, she was a Miss New Jersey, and but she was the most level-headed, down to earth, both of them.
They were the
They were,
perfect match.
yeah, and they were just perfect. I mean, they treated everybody so well. It didn't matter, and that's in the documentary. It didn't matter who you are, what your title was in life. It didn't matter to either one of them, either one. So to have for me, role models like that to look up to. I mean, I've got a lot to live up to for Dad, I can tell you that much. With this whole documentary, we're just so thrilled that everybody now is getting to see Dad the way we got to see him. We got front row seats obviously to it, but for everyone to see what kind of human being, not just a baseball, I know it's a wonderful baseball life, but the type of human being Dad was.
Well, you are following in his footsteps. You're doing great work. You're exposing him to new generations of fans too, along with guys like me. I'm several years older than you. I saw at the end of his playing career, I saw his whole managing career. I loved his time in Chicago. I agree with you. I don't know why they ever let him get away because he was the best thing to happen for many years. Before I let you go, tell everybody where they can find out more information about Jeff Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life.
This was actually a movie poster that I had made for Matt and for the movie, but in card form. So it's a Jeff Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life. On the back, it was pretty cool. These were the cards. It was a QR code that you could scan. But if you go on YouTube and you also see there's an hour and 15 minutes of bonus content, uh, bonus stories from Ron Guidry and many others. Mike Trombley, one of the former pitchers with Twins and the Dodgers, and you'll see way more stories. And so if you go on Wonderful Baseball Life on YouTube, Wonderful Baseball Life, Jeff Torborg, type those in, you'll be able to see it. And I hope more people do watch it. It's doing extremely well, but it'd be nice for more people to get to see it and see who Dad was.
Well, I appreciate it. I loved it. Like I said, I thought it was perfect from beginning to end, heartwarming, historic, humorous at times. It does expose him to a new generation, like I said, but us old guys like me loved it. I followed his whole career. It was so well done. I can't compliment you and Mr. Flesh. And I did see Last Trubisky. I agree with you. That was fantastic as well. But
You need to get Matt on and interview
that's
Matt because
that's in the plan.
he's like I said, he's a great human being for one, and he just he's got another documentary coming up. But and it's cool because you being in Chicago and being there as that organization really turned the corner.
Right.
And I know for us how proud I've got my dad's White Sox jerseys over there, and how proud I was of that time for Dad. But also I spent 18 years
Yeah.
with the White Sox, and the 2005 World Series was my second year with the team, and getting to spend that time with Ozzie Guillen and knowing that that's another thing that documentary touches on is that people didn't realize, I don't think, how even years after Dad was gone from the White Sox, he still had it, he was an instrumental part of putting some pieces in place because he did call Jerry Reinsdorf and said, I'm not saying you get rid of your manager or whatever, but if you ever do, Ozzy's ready. And that's true. And Jerry actually called or told Dad at the end of the World Series and actually sent Dad a watch from the
Cool.
World Series. It was very cool. But says if you don't make that call, none of this happens. And it's true.
Yeah.
And so when you look that the White Sox are still wearing those uniforms that he was instrumental in changing to those from the Campbell Soup Sea hats and those uniforms,
Hated
so
those uniforms.
oh yeah, those I know it was funny because it's true on that documentary when we talk about it. Dad said when he got hired, said, "Yeah, we want to hire you as manager." He goes, now that you got a new big league manager, how about we get a new big league uniform?" And it was like, well, what do you mean? Eddie
Yeah.
Einhorn designed those, and he's like, "Uh-oh."
Oh.
Like, oh man, if I just got this job, I might have just lost it. But all of that was true, and he said he really wanted to go back to that old SOX, the old English SOX. And he was that was a big part. So they're still wearing those. And that 20th reunion of the 2005 World Series, was just held this past year. So some special times that he still had a part of even being gone that long.
Well, Chicago owes a lot to your father, and we owe a lot to you and to Matt Flesh. I encourage everyone to check out Jeff Torborg, A Wonderful Baseball Life. If you're a baseball fan or just a fan of a good story, a good life, you will love this. And I loved it. Dale, I appreciate your time. I thank you for everything you did for Chicago. I thank you for this documentary. And again, I was a big fan of your dad's, and he was a fantastic man and player. So I appreciate your time, sir.
I appreciate all the kind words, and I appreciate you being a fan of back then and promoting this because it really means a lot to our family that you're doing this, and I appreciate you allowing me to have this time to talk about Dad some more.
It's totally been my pleasure. Thank you very much, Dale. Have a great night.